Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be holding bilateral talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Russia today. Prime Minister Modi is on a two-day visit to Russia and has already reached Vladivostok in this morning. Prime Minister Modi's meeting with Russian President assumes importance after Russia backed India over the abrogation of Article 370. This is the first time both the leaders are going to meet after Russia observed that Kashmir was an internal matter of India. During the summit, Modi and Putin are expected to firm up a 5-year roadmap for deeper cooperation in the oil and gas sector, apart from sealing a range of agreements in several key sectors. All right, let me now go across and introduce my colleagues, those who are joining us to give us a 360-degree perspective on this very important bilateral. SHIVAKUMAR, consulting editor, India Today, is here in the studio with me. Geeta Mohan, National Foreign Affairs editor, India Today, is also joining us this morning. Shiv, let me start with you. Russia has always been seen, at least by a lot of people in India, as a very solid key support for India when it comes to the defense, sector. How have things changed over the years, and what would Russia and India be looking at in this sector during this visit?
Well, this visit is very important, Ankit, because in many ways there are a lot of firsts. I think it's one of the first times that an Indian Prime Minister has visited the far east of Russia. This is Vladivostok, where the Eastern Economic Summit is concerned. And the flavor of this particular visit is important because it is almost entirely focused on energy cooperation, whether it is nuclear energy, oil and gas, investments by Indian companies in oil fields in Russia, India trying to hedge its own energy dependence on the Gulf by getting more energy and oil and gas from Russia. All of these are on the table right now. They have been for many years, and it's going to be taken forward in a big way. And the Modi-Putin relationship, which is seen to be very close, is going to be an enabler there. Ankit, since you asked about defense, both Modi and Putin will be visiting the Zvezda shipyard in Vladivostok to underline the defense relationship, because that is seen as a key sweetener and a door opener as far as the larger relations are concerned. Remember, it's been a very turbulent phase recently with the S-400 missile deal, with the shadow of the United States, Trump sanctions on India and Russia for this particular sale. But India and Russia have proven that their friendship is able to navigate through all of those bits of turbulence, and it has prevailed. So therefore, today's summit, the Eastern Economic Summit, where Modi will be meeting with Putin, like you rightly said, comes after Russia has expressed total support for India on the issue of Article 370, and it is about India moving forward on energy cooperation with Russia.
And Geeta, this is also a very significant visit, because the fact remains that though Russia and India have a very firm relationship, but coming after the abrogation of Article 370, unconditional support to India by Russia, this does in fact assume a much more significance than a usual India-Russia bilateral would be.
That's right. The annual summit between India and Russia normally takes place in December, but because Prime Minister Narendra Modi was invited as chief guest for the Eastern Economic Forum, the annual summit is taking place on the very same sidelines of that very same summit. Having said that, it is a very important relationship. Look at the kind of support Russia has extended to India. Like Shiv was saying, there are on very important sensitive aspects such as Kashmir. Russia has known the sensitivity and completely stood by India despite some quarters in the international community questioning or raising concerns regarding situation within Kashmir. Russia has steered clear, saying that it's internal to India, and that it stands that there is no difference in India's stand and Russia's stand on the issue of Kashmir. This despite, Ankit, the fact that Russia has started dealing with Pakistan as well, and Pakistan in many ways than one is somebody that they're having some sort of defense ties as well. So keeping all those aspects in mind, we're looking at Putin and Modi, not just looking at the current scenario of relationship, but also 5 years ahead. There's a 5-year roadmap that is going to be drawn on the oil and energy sector,
okay,
to India-Russia ties, as also defense cooperation. And conversations will also happen about sanctions by the United States of America
Yes.
and how to deal with it.
You know, Shiv, Russia still is a major partner as far as India's defense needs are concerned. About 60 to 70% of the defense hardware coming from Russia. Yesterday we saw how the American Apache attack helicopters were inducted in the Indian Air Force. What would be the Russians, in fact, putting on the table for India? What would be interesting for India now to, in fact, going forward in the modernization of the Indian Defence Forces?
You know, Ankit, I just returned from Russia, where I visited many of these defense establishments, in fact. And it's interesting you ask, because one of the important things about even summits of this kind is, even though the larger flavor may be about energy cooperation, the defense deals, the defense cooperation is never out of the picture, because that's where the real dollars and cents are. That's where the cooperation is. And the enormous billions of dollars of deals that are on the table between India and Russia will always be a sweetener as far as cooperation is concerned. And I'm not saying this cynically. That's the way diplomacy actually works. And Russia has proven to be a very reliable friend. It's interesting you mentioned the Apaches yesterday, because the symbolism there, Ankit, is that India, which was known to have been an ally or aligned with the Russians in the past, has now become a very close ally of the United States and has been able to navigate a close relationship with both these so-called former adversary countries in a very mature manner while getting the best deal for itself. As far as defense deals are concerned, you've got the S-400 anti-air missile deal, which is the largest single defense deal that India has ever signed with Russia. You've got various ships that are going to be supplied, including frigates and other kinds of vessels. Remember, Modi and Putin will be visiting the Zvezda shipyard near Vladivostok today or tomorrow, Ankit, and that is one of the places where India's a sole nuclear submarine was built. The Chakra, INS Chakra, which is a Russian-built Akula 2 submarine, was built there, and there is an offer for another leasing of another nuclear submarine on the table. So all of those things, coupled with the Kalashnikov rifle factory in Amethi, which has kicked into operations recently, means that the defense relationship between both these leaders and what they've made possible is always going to be an enabler, a door opener, a sweetener, a kind of lubricant for many of the other things that happen. Geeta just mentioned that 5-year plan as far as energy cooperation is concerned. The annual summit between India and Russia always has a lot of deliverables and takeaways, and we are expecting that this one is going to have some too.
Geeta, this also significantly comes after the G7 summit where Prime Minister Narendra Modi went, met the American president. He also met other world leaders. And significantly, Russia did not figure in that list of G7. They are G7 because Russia is now out. Otherwise, it was G8. So does it also, the timing of this, is it also in a way significant after meeting all the other world leaders, straight away going to Russia for this two-day bilateral?
Well, interesting point you make over there, Ankit, because I was going to come to that. Even in the G7 summit, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was invited as one of the special guests, conversations took place about re-inducting Russia into the G8, and that conversation certainly was steered by India as well as many other countries. There were questions that were posed to President Trump as well with regards to Russia being re-inducted or again becoming a part of G7 and hence going back to the erstwhile G8 grouping. So that's the way India has stood by Russia as well. So while, like Shiv said, Russia has been a reliable partner of India, it has been India also has been a reliable partner of Russia. Look at India's stance with regards to the United States of America and the CAPSA sanctions against Russia. India stood by Russia and went ahead with the deals. In fact, there is news and reports that the first tranche of payment for the S-400s have been made. There's no confirmation, but there certainly is one certainty that India is going to go ahead with the S-400s and payments certainly would be made. On Russia's stand when it comes to Syria, India, China, Russia, they stand together. So clearly, when it comes to reliability, it's a two-way stream, and India has kept its end of the bargain when it comes to being a reliable strategic partner of Russia.
Just to sum this up, and we'll be going back to this story because in just a short while from now, as Shiv was telling us, that shipyard visit of both the leaders is going to begin. Shiv, what is it that you today are looking at? What would be the the icing on the cake that you're looking at in this? Because always the bilateral between India and Russia, as you were saying, has been quite fruitful. There have been a lot of deliverables. What will be the key issues that you will be looking at between both these leaders, when both these leaders meet?
Since I cover the defense sector, there's a very, very crucial deal that's on the table that all defense correspondents are looking at closely, Ankit, that is expected to be signed at the annual summit this time. And that is an umbrella agreement between India and Russia on the supply and creation of spare parts. Remember, you very correctly said, Ankit, that over 60% of Indian military equipment is of Russian or Soviet origin, and spare parts have always been a legacy problem because either they are not manufactured anymore, or they are of a high cost, or India is not able to access them in time to keep its fleet serviceable. So this has been a niggling issue between India and Russia for many years. Apparently, Modi and Putin have arrived at an umbrella agreement that will be a kind of turnkey solution to that legacy problem, and they will have a spares partnership for all of the equipment that Russia has supplied. Apart from that, there could be some very significant movement on this, on an India-Russia joint venture to manufacture the Kamov 226 light helicopter for the three services, Ankit, which has been stuck for years because of various issues. These are helicopters that are supposed to be manufactured in Tumkur in Karnataka, just outside Bengaluru, with HAL as one of the partners. That is expected to also move forward. It's definitely going to be on the table. So these two things, even if one of them actually happens or see some forward movement, it's going to be good news for the defense sector.
And Geeta, every time Modi meets any world leader, it is always about the chemistry, the bromance we saw, and a lot was spoken and written about how Modi and Trump met, the kind of camaraderie, banter that they had. What is it that you're expecting on a very personal front between Putin and Narendra Modi? What sort of a relationship do they share, as world leaders?
Well, a very warm relationship. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has always focused on the personal aspect as well, creating a bond to the extent that if there are differences or any problems, that they can pick up the phone and talk to each other. He's done that with Trump. He's done that with Netanyahu. He's done that with Abe and with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Some of those very rare presidents or leaders of the world who do not share or have the kind of camaraderie or bonhomie that Prime Minister Narendra Modi shares with them, with other leaders of the world. And so yes, apart from this, there's always a very personal factor or that is included in the Prime Minister's itinerary. This time around, they are going to visit a judo facility. We know that President Putin practices judo. We'll have to see whether if Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Putin are going to get into the ring and try out judo.
Okay, Geeta, yes, just hold on to that thought. In fact, these are the live visuals, in fact, coming in now. Both the Prime Minister and the Russian President together. In fact, they will be boarding this chopper and then would be taken to the shipyard. The Shiv was, in fact, just telling us a short while back. These are the visuals of the Prime Minister and the Russian President, both of them right now at some airfield, in fact, where they would be taken from here to that shipyard. Shiv, both of them, when we were just talking about their body language and these are the kind of visuals. Oh, the security is now gone, both of them walking, and both in a way also in Russia and here in India are seen as these very strong-headed, decisive leaders. Almost similar sort of an image, at least for their polity.
And this kind of body language you see, between Modi and so many leaders in the world. I think, Modi pays a lot of attention to the body language, and that's why we get images like this. Well spotted, Ankit. The security is out of the way, so the spotlight is focused on Modi and Putin. Like we always say, anyone would give $1 million to know what this banter is really all about. We hear the official banter, the stuff we hear at press conferences if there is ever a press meet, but these two leaders are enigmatic beyond anyone's imagination. Look at Modi's body language with leaders across the board. Recently with Trump, whether it is Shinzo Abe, Emmanuel Macron, wonderful pictures from France. You've seen him with Benjamin Netanyahu. You've seen him with other leaders. The kind of body language, the bromance as you rightly called it, people may dismiss that as frivolous, but ask any diplomat and they'll tell you that the kind of body language that two world leaders share is hugely important. The chemistry always fuels camaraderie, understanding. It smoothens edges if there are any edges as far as deals are likely to be signed. Nobody is saying that body language and chemistry is going to soften one side or the other. Remember, both these leaders are known to be decisive, tough, unyielding, unapologetic, in many ways authoritarian as well, but maybe that's why they actually get along. And I agree with Geeta when she says that the body language between Modi and Putin has always been very warm, and it certainly signifies that here as well. Absolutely,
and these images in fact are coming in from Russia right now. Both the leaders have they've just gone on board a vessel. And then, of course, we've been told that they'll be taken to that shipyard. Before I go to Geeta, Shiv, the Russian, in fact, Indian Navy's equipment, the bedrock has been what we get from Russia. What exactly, specifically for the naval sector, would we be looking at? Just because we're going to a shipyard, I just wanted to, tell our viewers once again what will be important for India when it comes to our naval support.
Sure, Ankit. A lot of things. As far as the Indian Navy is concerned, it's almost overwhelmingly Russian. From your Talwar class frigates to your Vikramaditya, which is your only aircraft carrier, to your only nuclear submarine, and most of your submarine fleet, your Kilo class fleet, all Soviet origin. They're either built in Russia or being serviced in Russia at this time. Russia now stands to supply India, a few more frigates. They're competing for India's biggest submarine building project. I visited that submarine facility in St. Petersburg recently, the Admiralty shipyard. The Amur submarine has been offered to the Indian Navy. Apart from that, the importance of the visit of Modi and Putin to the Zvezda shipyard, Ankit, is also because India's only nuclear submarine, the INS Chakra, the nuclear attack submarine, has been leased from Russia, and much of the work on that submarine was conducted at this particular shipyard, and India is looking to lease a second such submarine from Russia, and Putin's government has been totally amenable to that idea. So all manner of ships, Russia is competing for other kinds of ships as well,
yes,
including minesweepers and other requirements of the Indian Navy. So Russia and India have a long relationship, Ankit. And since this meeting, this summit is about energy cooperation, might I also add that in the India's own made-in-India nuclear submarine, the INS Arihant, was made with a lot of Russian cooperation, and this was technology that no other country in the world would have supplied to India. The nuclear power, the nuclear, the way it's mated with the submarine, all of that technology provided to India. So these visits are extremely important.
So now a very symbolic visit, in fact, to that shipyard, and this vessel, in fact, now just moving from the port, from an harbour, and going towards the shipyard where both Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin will be taking a look at the shipyard. And of course, the ship was telling us very important naval deals also expected to come up in this meeting. Geeta, once again, just the significance of these images. We have seen how carefully crafted these moments are. Suddenly, there were a lot of security men from both the sides, from the Russian president and from the Indian Prime Minister, and then they disappear. This long walk between two leaders, very firm, sturdy walk towards this, in fact, vessel which they have boarded. These are very well-crafted moments, isn't it? Made for television.
Well, absolutely. Look at the walk that we see of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This certainly is the restricted format that we see between two leaders. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has focused on restricted formats, not just within closed doors, but also outside, to get the people of their own respective countries a feel of what the leadership really is, what the relationship really is. He's had a walk on the beach with Prime Minister Netanyahu. He's had a walk with Prime Minister Abe when Abe was visiting India. He's had a stroll with President Xi Jinping in Gujarat, and then very recently in France, a morning walk with President Macron. Like Shiv was saying, the visuals are telling, and those visuals speak volumes of where the relationship really stands. and goes a long way in becoming a part of India's foreign policy toolkit to take things forward. While, like Shiv said, Ankit, while these walks, the camaraderie, the bonhomie does not soften a country's stand, India will continue to maintain and see that they get the best deal out of any agreement that's signed with any country, Russia included. But this also shows that all the negotiations have already been done and dusted. The leaders are meeting only to sign the deals now and to take things forward, which means that it is a presentation of how the relationship stands, where the relationship stands between India and Russia, and where they're headed. There is going to be an important conversation on a 5-year roadmap, Ankit, which goes to show that they're looking at longevity of the relationship, despite the fact that there were concerns India had with regards to Russia opening up ties with Pakistan. But that has not changed Russia's stand with regards to Kashmir, Article 370, even with regards to terrorism and Pakistan.
You know, Shiv, as we were discussing this, how well crafted it was, exactly the security services knew when everybody had to be moved out of that frame so that both the leaders can be the focus. Both these leaders insist on speaking in their mother tongue. Modi usually speaks in Hindi, and we've seen how Vladimir Putin always speaks in Russian. It will be very interesting to see, without an interpreter, what exactly and how they are, what conversation they are having. But, having said that, it's very significant, these kind of moments, in fact, not only for the domestic audience in both the countries, but also to send out a message, like in this case would be to Pakistan, where they have been struggling to find an ally to support their stand on Article 370 on Kashmir issue, and where Russia and other countries have firmly stood behind India.
And remember, this comes at a time when Russia in the past, Ankit, has been a partner of Pakistan as far as defense equipment is concerned, energy cooperation is concerned. But Article 370 has basically seen Pakistan hit a wall even with Russia, and that's why Pakistan has been left isolated with only China really sort of practically on its side. These images, coming back to these images, Ankit, you're right, they're very well crafted. I don't think anything is really left to chance. The amount of personality cult in this one frame is almost overwhelming. It's bursting beyond the frames of that picture. You're right. The fact is, the fact that these images, these events, these photo opportunities are carefully crafted is because a lot of thought goes into them, Ankit. This is not a shallow business. This is very serious. India and Russia are two hugely important countries. The cooperation between these two countries matters a lot, not just to the two separate local audiences, and they are politicians after all, but also the fact that there is regional security to speak of, there is terrorism to speak of, the Pakistan question, Afghanistan, the Middle East are hugely important issues. The Afghanistan security situation is something I'm sure Putin and Modi will be discussing, even though it's not officially on the table. So when I say that this walk along the banks of the sea, getting onto the boat, this is all the soft stuff. This is for television. This is to establish the mood. This is a message to Imran Khan and many others, including to China. And remember, Pakistan, China and Russia recently had a high-level trilateral military exercise which raised a lot of eyebrows in the region, especially for India and the United States. But images like this basically say that India is a mature enough nation. It has solid ties with countries like Russia, and it's going to continue walking down that path.
So we'll, in fact, come back and continue keeping the focus on this story once we start getting the visuals from the shipyard where both these leaders are headed. But we have to take a very quick break at this moment. And on the other